more influential, John Lennon or Richard Nixon?
That's a very good question. I think Richard Nixon was very interesting because he was a very smart man and a really interesting president. And as a case study, if you really look at Richard Nixon's career, the man was brilliant. With his whole ping pong diplomacy thing, the way that he was really into going over and trying to ease relations with China, because if you recall, prior to Nixon, things were getting really tense with China. And so he was brilliant in the way that he did the ping pong diplomacy. And if you look back at his Checkers speech about his dog Checkers, that was fascinating. The problem with Nixon was his own paranoia got the best of him. And he was so paranoid, he was keeping a scorecard. And it's interesting you bring up Lenin because he was spying on Lenin. He had the FBI looking into Lenin because Lenin was really against the war. And so he was on Nixon's huge enemies list. And then John Lennon was so fascinating because number one, he was my favorite Beatle. And I've always been a huge John Lennon fan. And when you look at the lyric to Imagine, that is so prescient what he wrote and how it applies to today with all the religious wars, even more today than it was back then. Imagine no religion, to me, is so important, because if you were to take kids and just say, you're not going to be allowed to be raised with religion. Now, this is going to sound really radical, but when you're 18, if you want to, or 21, then look at this Bible, and what does this mean to you? And I don't mean any disrespect to anybody who lives by the Bible. More power to you. I like the idea of people who have a feeling of a God or some sort of afterlife of spirit or anything, because I feel an energy source out there. I don't know what it is. However, if you were to look at it when you were older, you go, what is this cartoon I'm reading? And they could make choices of their own and go, okay, this is what I want to follow, rather than just brainwashing a kid and saying, okay, you're Jewish, you are Christian, you are Muslim, and you all guys are all going to hate each other. This is why your God's the best. And then the other person grows up thinking, my God's the best. And it is a form of brainwashing.
It's a division again, just like you're talking about dividing people.
Yeah. And so Lennon was very, obviously very smart, and what a sense of melody. And without McCartney, he wouldn't have been what he was. They needed each other. McCartney provided the sweet saccharine, and Lennon was the punk rocker. And when they melded together, they made great art. And, you know, they also battled, but they grew up as friends, and the day he died was just such a sad day. So I think they were both very influential. I think in the long run, Lennon wins.